First of all, you are exceptionally wealthy now. And I want to know, awesome. Yeah, it is awesome. Yeah. What changes when you go from moderately wealthy to like just ridiculously wealthy to the point where you don't even get out of bed for less than $1 million opportunity? What is it like? Do you fly private now? Is it a security concern? Tell me.
Well, there is a bunch of weird things that come about from it. One of them is I had a long-term plan to be affiliated with some universities and have done things like teaching classes and other kinds of things. It was really weird.
Like donating your time.
Yes.
Yeah.
And also the intellectual architecture. Like, interesting questions about how do you teach entrepreneurship, what should a modern university education be, and essentially, like overnight, all of those changed to donor relationships, right? So, like for example, someone I've been talking to about people, how do you teach them?
They changed it to a donor relationship?
They changed it.
Yeah, like, hey, Reid, we'd love you giving us your time, but how about?
Yeah,
a lot of money.
And how about like I show up and I bring the chancellor to school, right? And we'll sit there and talk about how would I do everything the school's doing in the last couple of years.
You feel like people only care about your money?
Well, it's not that as much as because their job is raising money, it basically means that the vast majority of all nonprofits and everything else, now the principal touch point is what money can you give us?
Yeah.
Right? So you're approached as a quasi cash rich.
What else? Do you only fly private now? Do you have your own Boeing jet?
I don't. Certainly, I don't have a jet. Although I do fly private some. It's one of those classic. It's actually for me. It sounds so weird. It's kind of something to lie about on stage. But,
go for it.
yeah, surprise. It's like, well, should you fly private or should you fly commercial? Commercial is more eco. It's more with the kind of the middle class values that I hold dear. On the other hand, flying private is a lot more convenient.
Yeah.
And so, it's kind of a blend these days. But I would never imagined I would ever have flown a private plane by myself and not.
Just you and the pilots.
Yes. I never would. It's uncomfortable to think about because I'd rather not have.
Well, I also want to talk about your book. So you co-wrote a book called The Startup Review earlier this year. It came out. You've sold how many copies?
I think about 120,000.
That's pretty good for a non-profit book. So do you feel like it's changing lives?
Well, it's interesting. In the consumer internet space, we're generally used to much larger scale numbers, right? So, LinkedIn growing at 2 members per second, etc. It's much larger numbers. When someone says 120,000 to you as a okay, that's not very small number.
But from authors I know, that's pretty awesome for that kind of book.
Yeah, and it's hard to know what the ultimate impact is. I did it, Ben and I did it because we wanted essentially to get out this new meme, how to think about work and career that people haven't really gotten to yet. And we're still hopeful to have that kind of meme transformation, that kind of stop thinking as a career ladder, stop thinking it as kind of a linear progression, think of it more as a jungle gym, think of it more as kind of how do you invest in yourself as an entity. And thus far, I'd say that the people who read the book really like it, and I don't think we've created that movie.
And you're going to keep trying to do that?
Yeah, and off.
So I just want to talk about, you spend part of your time really good as the executive chairman. You're very active there. It seems every time I've met with you the last couple of years, you've always been there. You're a partner of Greylock. You're also very active there. I want to talk a little bit about those entities, but I also just want to tap into your brain on some of the bigger issues of the day to the extent that we're going to talk about them. So I'll jump around a little bit. But the first is, Facebook. You were one of the very first investors. You invested at this $5 or $6 million valuation. How much did you invest in that?
$37,500.
You invested $37,500 at $5 million valuation in Facebook. So that worked out extremely well for you. Yeah. What do you think? What do you think right now is multiple splits, $20 a share, whatever it is? Do you think it's a good buy now or not?
Well, I'm a big believer in Facebook's long-term position. The real question is how it plays out over the next year or two in terms of whether or not you should. I suspect that if it continues at this price, then it will be a good buy, either now or at some point.
Yeah.
Because I think their ability to
Yeah.
And I think that the executive team there is actually very strong. And so, given all that, and given its a billion users, a billion plus, and a huge amount of time, I'm very bullish on the future prospects. Whether I would give someone advice to buy stock today or not depends a lot on what you think the next 6 months is.
Okay, what do you think you're going to do?
Well, myself, I'm waiting for all the walk-ups to come off and see how the market's will respond to those.
Yeah.
And then after that, that's when I pick up.
Some people generally say that if Lincoln did anything wrong with their IPO, it was underpricing because it rose so much. Generally, you guys are pat on the back as having a textbook perfect IPO. Facebook less so. You look at what Facebook did. Do you think that without the benefit of hindsight, you would have done things differently? Did they screw up somewhere that you saw, or it was just inevitable that it played out that way?
Well, I think it may have been inevitable. I mean, part they had unprecedented retail demand. You didn't know that the NASDAQ servers were going to go down, which caused a huge set of problems, and who knows exactly what would have happened if that hadn't happened. And then what's more, the backdrop they were on was that we were widely criticized for underpricing our IPO. Where we actually were pretty systematic about wanting to make sure that we brought in long-term shareholders who had been talking to management team for years, who understood where we were going, and we wanted to be part of that in terms of that process. And so, given all that, it's hard to know if we should have made different calls.
Yeah.
Obviously, in retrospect, in hindsight, which is always much easier, you would have made some different calls, but it's part of it is it's a unique problem, and not even Google had that level of just insatiable demand from the IPO. So how do you make decisions about pricing, share size, all these things? It's actually very challenging.
You don't think you can really say, without the benefit of hindsight, you saw errors that they just were obvious?
No. I mean, it's kind of a question of, and with that large an allocation, they could say, look, we do want more people who are just purely long-term, but with that large an allocation, it basically be everything.
So you're on the boards of obviously LinkedIn, Airbnb, Mozilla, Zynga, among others. Check out Zynga a little bit. Is there a tough spot? What are the board meetings like? Is Mark throwing furniture around the room?
Mark's not throwing furniture, but I mean, Mark is very committed. I think that, so on the positive column is, I think the social gaming space is so interesting. Zynga is the best position on it. Mark has the right kind of very fast creative cycle, which is useful for this. On the negative side, they didn't diversify their platform fast enough to hit some bumps hit them, as opposed to evening it out, whether it's mobile and other kinds of things. The company knows they need to do that. I think that they have a really interesting network of games that allows them to launch new games, but you have to launch games in the right time frame in order to make that happen.
Okay.
So I think the path forward is relatively straightforward for the company in order to get back in kind of good races. And Mark's committed to making it happen.
What's your favorite team to be?
Scramble with Friends. I like the With Friends franchise. It's perfect. It's 2 minutes in terms of a break. You can talk trash to someone as they're beating you.
Which I play with. Okay.
I'll play Scramble with Friends with you.
Do it. We're like Discovery Fund. This is always an interesting topic of the big venture funds doing angel investing, because one is it tends to screw up the pricing for smaller angel investors, like me, for example, so we get a little annoyed. But also the big funds bring a lot to the table. Yeah, but we call it, anyway, it's not about me, it's about you. So so you've got you're doing these angel investments, sometimes you don't follow on, or you almost never do. Just tell me about that. How's the Discovery Fund going? How many companies have you done? And you like the program? Is it 2 years old now?
It's 2 years old. We actually announced it here with you 2 years ago. We have about 75 companies. We have a bunch of companies that got the follow-on of the 2010, 2011 class. 40% of them got follow-on financing. I think only 1 or 2 have gone out of business. The rest of them actually are kind of still in that long burn rate. The follow-ons, we've let a couple of them. Benchmark, Andreessen, Khosla, Index, all that, various deals on the Discovery Fund. We're actually quite pleased with it. It helps us create, part of the whole idea is to have a network of companies that we provide services to, like we have, what do you do with data in the modern world? How do you do PowerPoint decks? What do you do in terms of solving distribution problems? We have those events for early stage companies. And it actually allows us to collaborate with some interesting entrepreneurs that otherwise, on a kind of standard venture model, only a board seat and a certain percentage, you kind of say, call me when you're ready, and I can't work with you early. And so all of that, I think, has been.
So I have $15 million now. So how much has been invested over 2 years, or is that per year?
No, $15 million over 2 years.
You're putting $7.5–8 million a year into these companies.
We're pretty selective. Most of them are about 100 million, and then occasionally we'll go.
Okay. So you guys are doing a lot of other stuff. You just had some kind of hackathon, hackfest in July, and how did that work out? You like this stuff?
Well, part of what we're trying to do is how do you work with really early stage, high talent engineers, product design people, and both help them with companies and help them route them into companies. That's part of what this whole model I think about in this kind of venture throughout. And so one of the things we decided to do is the first ever kind of venture fund, backed hackathon.
Yeah.
Right? We got 150 people, 44 teams.
Yeah.
We brought in, because the whole idea is how do you kind of connect people in the ecosystem the right way. We brought in kind of judges from various portfolio companies.
Yeah.
We had from RAP and a bunch of other companies there, kind of working with them from the early stages, connecting us out to these companies. And then the final judges were Kevin Systrom, Mike Olson, Mike Schefter, and myself to judge the finalists in terms of.
There were 150 teams. So 150
people, 44 teams.
Okay.
10 in the final became finalists.
Okay.
And we selected the 3 of 10.
So you only sat through 10 pitches.
Yes, I was actually out of state, so I flew in literally just in time to make the last.
Okay. Did you fly private?
Yes.
Only person on the plane?
Yeah.
It's so awesome.
Yeah. I feel like a carbon death. It's eco cloud in the open.
Okay, now I'm going to ask a really boring question, and it's all good stuff after this, from my point of view. You said that, you told me, or correct, that you think Greylock has, in your opinion, the strongest enterprise investment team in the business.
Yep.
And I said, enterprise, right? I like Ferraris, not mufflers. And then you said some stuff that I wasn't listening to. Let's talk about that just a little bit, and then I have some really good stuff to say. So.
Nobody's not going to be listening to me now either, but one thing is, actually, I think the next cycle on the IPOs are going to be really interesting enterprise business where technically have to be interested. And the second thing is that most of what's interesting happening out of enterprise has its roots in the consumer. So it's part of the synergy of the consumer enterprise business. But when you look at a company, we can't talk about Workday because it's in registration, but Aneel Bhusri and Machine have done all kinds of Palo Alto Networks, Cloudera, ServiceNow, Pure Storage. Companies that own the backbone of how these businesses work.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yes. But okay, I think part of what I found really interesting for me is that unexpected benefit of joining the venture side is learning a whole bunch of enterprises. There's substantial game-changing companies. Because if you can make how all businesses work much more efficiently, much more effectively, that's another way of changing the world.
I totally agree with you. Yeah, I love enterprise. All those people go Pat Gallagher, enterprise friend, and he loves that stuff. So
yes.
Apparently we're making money on something as well, so all for it. Okay, so Marissa Mayer. She's now the CEO of Yahoo. All I really want to ask about this is her pregnancy. Do you think it's ridiculous for her to be having a baby and be the CEO? That's something I want to talk about. I wrote a whole article about it. No, so what do you think? Is it a new hope, or is it just some weird?
Well, I think it's definitely a new hope. I think one thing I think was really good about what the Yahoo board did in selecting the person was selecting a product person. I think that these technology companies and strategies are inherently driven by product.
Yeah.
And so you need someone who is inherently a product person in order to really drive it. I think that was
somebody with an engineering degree, for
yes,
example.
engineering degree, focus on product, focus on design. I think that's exactly right in terms of selecting a person.
I get why Yahoo wants her. It was her one with Yahoo. Is that the part that I'm like, oh?
Well, I haven't talked to Marissa since she's really busy, so I don't have it actually from her own words, but I suspect that she looked at it as a really interesting challenge with some interesting valuable product assets that actually get taken to the next level. And she's like, okay, this is a challenge. It's a next step up from what I'm doing. It'll be fun to do. It'll be hard work. Where's the work for me? Now, I think one thing that I think is important to say in kind of public context about this is classically when markets and investors treat this is a kind of thing, a turnaround is a 3-month or 6-month thing. A turnaround like this is a 1 to 3 year gig. Maybe emphasis on free. So I would emphasize to the board and board shareholders to give the time to play out. Because it's not one of those things where you get around January and say, what have we done for you now? Because if the turnaround is really done, then all you really do is trim the cost. We're not really investing in the future.
Okay. Have you seen the news last week about Paul Graham at Y Combinator? He criticized Google Ventures privately at the leaks, and it became a public discussion. And I'll give you time that specifically to see it. But the question I ask is, what do you think about Y Combinator? Is it getting too big? Do you think that maybe there's some kind of stress? That's what
Well, I think they're definitely seeing some stress signs besides, like the class, them knowing all the class in depth, them being able to provide the right level of help on the infrastructure. The question of, are they really up to speed and helping everyone as much as they want to? Like, I think this is all just from their perspective, which is, I think, correct. I think that they're, kind of making a decision between, do we stay at this level and gear our services? Do we take it down a little bit? Do we gear up higher and really gear up our services? I think there's a strategic cycle for them. And I think that, part of the thing I think is also what Y Combinator is doing is they're trying to fight this notion that there's only, like, say, 5, 10, 15 companies per year that matter. And we can add more seed, like by getting a broader set of founders actually creating things, we can add more possible breakouts to the problem. And I think that's a really good addition. And I think that they're good additions for that. And so I think that whether they decide to go smaller in size or larger in size, I think they know what they're doing and they'll do it the right way.
Do you think Google Ventures was, evil in this whole thing?
No. I mean, I think, look, you blog about this, and I guess I agree with most of what you wrote in the blog. I mean, I think the question is, like any investors, the question is, look, we think this is an interesting company, but we're interested at this price. And I think that makes total sense, and I think it makes total sense for a startup to say yes or no, depending on what the investor brings to the party. Now, I think that people, especially, was it Adventure Beat that wrote about this? It was kind of a little harsh from the viewpoint of, part of what Paul tries to do is he tries to take what are largely a set of university kids, not all just to say, look, be careful of this and pay attention. And there was some things I'm sure that because he never intended for this, to be public, probably hideously embarrassed by it. There were probably a couple sentences in there that he would have changed or regretted in what you're saying. When you're writing an email, you have limited time to kind of put it out there and say, look, be careful about these sorts of things. This is the right thing to instruct the founders.
So you're saying you don't think Google Ventures is evil?
Or sure not.
What about Twitter?
What?
Specifically what I'm asking is, Twitter, seems to me, spent years inviting developers into their ecosystem. Build stuff, do this, do the other thing, and then they sort of systematically kick them out. Developers are, I think, justifiably enraged over this. Do you think that there's an issue there of trust and evilness, or do you think what they did was perfectly fine in kicking out developers? Speaking of which, by the way, you guys have gone the wrong end of that.
So we initially were trying pretty hard to keep the relationship with Twitter because we were worried about the liquidity in our system. And what we actually found was a number of status updates, right, number of messages in the system. And to our surprise, we actually found LinkedIn status updates, newsfeed, and those got substantially better than Twitter turns out. And the reason for that is because people have been associating their accounts and a whole bunch of random non-business news have been coming into it, which meant that you have a noisier set of news feeds. And much more surprised, because we were expecting, well, you build up liquidity, and then you do some filtering, and interact. Like, literally, my feed, Jeff's feed, a whole bunch of these comments that we got in from customer service was 98% positive. But like, oh, my feed's a lot better, I see a lot more information.
So it's just spam. All Twitter was sitting with spam.
Well, because it was so like, oh, having a latte, you know, the 49ers game, you know, a whole range of human expression where LinkedIn is primarily about business. And so people don't look to their LinkedIn network updates feed to have a yay 49ers or, you know, love the fish at, you know, restaurant X or this kind of thing. And so all of a sudden the feed's still out there.
Good riddance.
Well, from a LinkedIn perspective, it improved the product.
But forgetting LinkedIn, is it fair to ask developers to do things on your platform and then to summarily just execute them when you feel like you don't need them?
I think it's...
I didn't phrase that in a way to make it seem bad, by the way. I think that's an objective way to talk about it.
I think that it's a challenging thing. But on one hand, I think it's really not fair to developers. Because they went and based, you know, a bunch of their livelihoods, their product strategy, etc. on it. On the other hand, I think that the thing is, you know, Twitter also has a responsibility to its vision, its shareholders, you know, to kind of pursue a direction. And so the problem is what happens when there's now conflict between the two. And
you're being such a gentleman.
Well,
just say it. It was total bullshit what Twitter did. Why people are going to kick them out?
I think what I'm trying to say is partial.
I'm not saying that I think you should.
Yes, I'm saying it's partial bullshit, not total bullshit.
Just do it. Just say it.
Yeah, you can say it.
Just say it. It was partial bullshit. You're not a hammer and a hawk. It's bullshit. It's something to do with it.
The issue is...
What about Craigslist? Craigslist never invited anyone in. The New York Times is throwing this jihad against us, like, because every startup that wants in has some God-given right to be in. So everybody picks like Craigslist, who never invited anyone in. But do you see a problem there? Or?
Well, I think it's far less of a problem with Craigslist, because Craigslist has always had the view of, look, we don't want you building here, we want this to be this unique experience. Now, I think they're making a mistake in terms of both their product and how they're servicing the community, because I think both the product and servicing the community would be far better if what they did is they established a platform with some rules that they thought would be beneficial to the community.
Like Twitter did.
Well, Twitter didn't have much in the way of rules initially. I mean, that's part of the reason I was saying it's partial. It's like, look, they needed to put some order to the chaos in order to have a strategic direction in terms of what they're doing, have a unified experience, you know, get to the next level of the platform. There was a set of logic on their side as well. Now, it sucks to be developers in my case. And that was, you know, I think developers have legitimate right, which is firm. Now, in the Craigslist case, developers don't have legitimate right, because Craigslist has said, we never wanted to have you developing, we're running around our rules, you're running around our explicit statements. And so we've never essentially encouraged you to develop and come in as a function. Now, I actually think they should in the Craigslist case, because I think it would be much better, this isn't a pro-investment, pro-companies, etc. This is a pro-community, pro-product. I think it would be a lot richer in terms of what was being developed if they were to do something.
Create a platform for developers to contribute.
And then you can also, by the way, say, look, here are the constraints we want to make sure that the developers treat the whole community directly.
Shut them off, just like Twitter has. What about this? Now with Facebook, I know there's something we got here. You are still at Facebook, sure. Personally, I'm annoyed to hell at Facebook because let's say you and I are friends on Facebook, and you know, I think we are, but you start using some app, right? Say a little app or something. Facebook will give you all kinds of data on like my data just because we're friends, even though I have no relationship with that company at all. And it's annoying as hell that it's sort of they're handing that data out, and they seem to be doing it willy-nilly.
Yeah,
whoever wants it. And so what's up with that?
I think that's the most. A lot of things Facebook does, I think, are really great, awesome innovations. But I think that's the most kind of gray area for me they do. And I think the reason is because, in fact, the way that most of these social networks work, and they should work, is that as an app or a service or a provider only gets your data when you sign up for it. So look, I have a direct relationship.
And
so
I've authorized that data, my data.
So passing it back along from my account is, I think, something that, you know, sucks for you. Actually, even sucks for me because I don't really want to be doing that, you know, with my friends. I mean, you know, I thought a little bit about, you know, what kinds of things Facebook might be able to do. Like, for example, they should make me say, and have a little red say, do you want to give all of your friends' data to this app or something? And then say, you know, okay, that's fine. Because my guess is say no.
Yeah, that's creepy.
Yes.
You told me that you're still actively investing in social, where a lot of investors think that party is way over now. Why are you still doing that? What do you see as an opportunity there?
Well, we in the Valley tend to go, oh, social's over, right? You've got Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, it's done, etc. And actually, in fact, I think there's massive areas. We're social animals, right? We're creatures of the city, as Aristotle would say. And what that means is all of the major domains of human experience have a social element. So, my last two investments from Railroad were both essentially social investments. One was RAP, which is social gift cards, which is handing gift cards and making them social. Add that to mobile and all the rest of it. And then the other one is Edmodo, which is social networks for K-12, which is entirely different teacher-driven social network. And these are distinct and new and interesting as kind of social properties. And they are multi-million-dollar businesses and potential and these sort of things. And so I actually think social is still very alive.
And a lot of opportunities.
A lot of opportunities. And so I think the classic Valley, although that was so 2 or 3 years ago, was miscalling.
This guy used to work with PayPal, David Sachs, who was CEO of Gamma, I think still is, technically sold it. He said that, I'm going to talk about this tomorrow Wednesday, I'm on stage, and we roll on this. He said, failure of Silicon Valley, it's over because it's too hard now because all the big companies always suck up the good ideas. It's too hard to think of a good idea before the big companies get it. What is this all about? I mean, I'm asking, do you agree with this at all, that everything good has already been invented?
Well, absolutely not. I think Mark is recent. Also, spending on this. I think the question is to say that anytime you say everything has been invented, it's a failure of imagination. New things will be invented. That's precisely, it could be any number of things. And one of the things I've been going at is that there'll be a whole bunch of new kinds of apps based on data. Data is what prevails.
We'll start to talk about enterprise again. Data is all the way down.
But this works for consumer apps too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so I think that there's all kinds of areas where new kinds of software, new kinds of devices will be created both in consumer and enterprise. Obviously, what's going to really happen on mobile is still yet to really define. And so I think just saying, all these things have been invented is just...
So to put this further into context, Paul Graham wrote an article yesterday called Farming Black Swans. And he talked about Peter Thiel's talk about, we don't reference it like third party indirectly, but it doesn't matter. He said Peter has a Venn diagram that has, he's like, it has to, for ideas to get traction and to get investment and people, it has to sound like a bad idea, because if it wasn't, somebody's already done it. So, he drew a circle that sounds like a bad idea. But it actually has to be a good idea for it to work. So he has another circle that says, actually is a good idea. And it's the overlap between, sounds like a bad idea and is a good idea that's interesting. And what do you think about that?
Well, I think one of the really key things for most really significant companies is you need to have enough traction without competition. It's not from the big companies. It's from other startups where you begin to establish the basics and then later becomes understood to be a really great idea. LinkedIn had that characteristic, Google had that characteristic, Facebook had that characteristic. As an investment, everyone knew it was highly affluent college students. But all the discussion areas are really spread past college students, never monetized, all of these kind of classic things. So to have a great investment, either as a founder or as an investor, is you want to be contrarian and right. And contrarian is, one version of contrarian seems like a bad idea. Another version of contrarian is people just don't see it. They don't see this trend coming, they don't see that happening. And then you want to be right about it. And so the problem is, it's an idea that lots and lots of people have, and people have been trying a bunch, there's a huge amount of competition, and that makes it very difficult to make it into a
For me, Uber was this way. I never thought about Uber as possible. And then Travis, one day we were driving and told about Uber just once. Like, oh my God, this one, how did I not think about it? Like, how do I think about, basically, it's not exactly Airbnb for cars, but it's just, I can't live without it now. So what is the thing that is like, once we hear, it's like, oh my God, that's it. You must have one or two of those up your sleeve, right?
Not necessarily.
You don't have ideas every day for yourself?
No, most of my ideas, I like to have entrepreneurs come and bring me their ideas, because actually those are the ones that are like, your experience in practice, which is being, that's awesome. But I think that there is, I think that the fact that there's going to be more of those every year in a vibrant, innovative economy is just a fact.
So David was completely wrong.
Yes.
Yeah. David was completely wrong. Twitter, whether I think is partially bullshit. Yahoo might or might not be a buy. What else can we get out of today? You like Craigslist? Say one more, just say one thing that's semi-controversial before we go.
Semi-controversial? All right, that's a little
Twitter, they really screws you guys over. Right? And all you're saying is partial bullshit. I think you can just say, like, what did you say around the office when you first heard about it? You say, this is partially bullshit, or did you say...
That's a good question. I think we were alarmed at, like, okay, one of the things we wanted is we wanted to have the liquidity, of kind of,
so it's full bullshit.
Of a set of status updates. And we thought that was the most natural part of the Twitter sphere as a way of doing it. And that's one reason we still allow people to tweet out, right, when they're posting it on LinkedIn. But but we were very pleasantly surprised.
At their partial bullshit?
No, and in fact, the product actually does.
Oh, that you didn't actually care what it was going. Thanks very much for your time. Appreciate your time.